Welcome back. All right, so segueing off of the offer sheet video I did today, we're going to talk about Scott Stevens today. A career video that's been requested many, many, many times over. And so we're going to look at it. He only spent his time with 3 different teams, but very eventful with all 3, really, even though he only had the 1 year in St. Louis. Scott Stevens is one of the best defensive defensemen ever. He was in the top 100 players in NHL history, but there are also those who will say he was a dirty player. They will point to some of his hits. They're the exact same hits that people who loved Scott Stevens will say these hits are an example of good time, old-fashioned hockey. We didn't care if we rattled your brain. Just sit him down on the bench and get him, stick in his hand and put him back on the ice. It was a different time. But the after effect of Scott Stevens and of the hits that got more and more public as his career went along, more high profile, it kind of forced the NHL into action, I think. I think the way that Scott Stevens played was part of what forced their hand. There were others who crossed that line. Brian Marchment being one, Chris Simon being another. But Scott Stevens, if the question's asked, was he a dirty player or a clean player, my answer would be, for the time, he was clean, and he got as close to that line as possible, while maintaining a feud with Ty Domi without actually fighting him. They never actually had a fight in a game, but they didn't like each other. Ty Domi saying at one point they were in a clutch situation where he was bear hugging him, and Domi's like, "You let me go, I'm gonna end you." I'm paraphrasing because I can't say word for word what he said, and Stevens didn't let go. Now, in that situation, I don't think I would have let go either, because Domi at that time was capable of ending people. So he's drafted 5th overall in 1982, and Scott Stevens is the perfect combination of toughness and scoring and everything you want in a defenseman. And he would go on to be a 13-time All-Star. But he starts out in Washington, where there hasn't been any success yet. However, he comes in that first year, 77 games, 9 goals, 16 assists, 25 points, 195 penalty minutes. He fought all right. The question mark becomes, did he fight guys that he knew that he didn't have to worry about, like Domi? The question being, did he target Niedermayer, or did Domi have to fight Niedermayer because Stevens wouldn't fight him? That kind of thing, right? So, and it's an age-old argument we've heard with other players too. The guy who gets into the fight, who does he actually drop the gloves with? So he was 3rd in Calder voting in 1983, and he was learning from, among others, Rod Langway was teaching him the defensive side of the game. Can't imagine having a better teacher than Rod Langway. 83-84. The offense shows up. 78 games, 13 goals, 32 assists, 45 points, 201 penalty minutes. He racked up a lot of penalty minutes in his younger days. 84-85, 80 games, 21 goals. That's the only time he scored 20 goals in a season. 44 assists, 65 points. 221 penalty minutes, which was 7th overall in the NHL that year, at a time where penalty minutes were really, really high. And he had 16 power play goals out of his 21 goals, which was 5th overall in the NHL. So really good on the power play, and totally different defenseman from what we would see towards this part of his career. So 85-86, 73 games, 15 goals, 38 assists, 53 points, 165 penalty minutes. The interesting thing is, he's not getting Norris voting. And I'm really surprised when I look at Stevens' career, and he never had a Norris Trophy win. You would think, looking at Scott Stevens' career, how long he played, he had a Norris Trophy win. He didn't. So, 86-87, 77 games, 10 goals, 51 assists, 61 points, 283 penalty minutes, which was 6th. So you'll notice here he had the 165 penalty minutes. His penalty minutes dropped because Washington didn't want him fighting. So they were willing to bring in Dwight Schofield so Schofield could do the policing, and so his penalty minutes dropped, but not for long. Stevens had a temper, and he was willing to go out there and do what he had to do, and so 283 penalty minutes showed he was doing it often. 87-88, 80 games, 12 goals, 60 assists, 72 points, 184 penalty minutes. And he's a first-team All-Star, and he's 2nd in Norris voting behind the great Ray Bourque. So he's starting to garner a lot of attention. But it's in Washington. Washington doesn't have success in the playoffs. So there's a limited amount of attention he's going to get compared to when he's wearing this jersey, right? 88, 89, 80 games, 7 goals, 61 assists, which was 8th in the NHL that year, 68 points, 225 penalty minutes, the final time that he has over 200 penalty minutes. As he goes throughout his career, it's kind of a matter of pick your spots. Pick your spots when it comes to penalties. Watch what you're doing. 89-90, 56 games, 11 goals, 29 assists, 40 points. So he scores well. 154 penalty minutes. So yes, if he played the other 24 games, odds are he probably gets close to or passes 200 penalty minutes. But then it happens. July 16th, 1990, he signs an offer sheet with the St. Louis Blues. And it's an expensive offer sheet for Ron Caron. It costs him 5 first-round picks. Caron's fine with that. And in 78 games in the one season he spends in St. Louis, 5 goals, 44 assists, 49 points, 150 penalty minutes. Scott Stevens is really becoming that all-around defenseman. The penalty minutes have come down. He's, again, picking his spots. The hitting is still there. He doesn't take the hitting out of his game. But that 1 year in St. Louis, while St. Louis is trying to, purchase their way towards a trophy, that silver one they gave out in June, well, they tried purchasing it again after adding Stevens in 1990. In 1991, they signed Brendan Shanahan. Well, they get him, but the arbitrator says, hey, so the award going to New Jersey is Scott Stevens. So St. Louis, who have just had to give up 5 draft picks to get Stevens, now have lost him a year later because they signed Shanahan. This is when Ron Caron was just making all the GMs angry. So now in New Jersey, Scott Stevens, it just works. 68 games that first year, 17 goals, 42 assists, 59 points. 124 penalty minutes. He's on a second team in the league, and he's a fourth place finisher in the Norris voting. So now he's in the Norris conversation, and in New Jersey, he becomes the face of and captain of the franchise not long after. 92, 93, 81 games, 12 goals, 45 assists, 57 points, 120 penalty minutes. Notice how much his penalty minutes have come down. 93, 94, 83 games, 18 goals, 60 assists, 78 points, 112 penalty minutes. And he finishes second in Norris Trophy voting, and he's a first-team All-Star for the second and final time in his career. Everything looks really good. But 94, of course, this is where Mark Messier guarantees a victory over New Jersey and gets it. So that's going to stick with the Devils. And 94-95, they get the ultimate revenge in that he plays 48 games, 2 goals, 20 assists, 22 points. So his scoring is down, 56 penalty minutes, but they win the Stanley Cup. And during that Stanley Cup final, Scott Stevens throws a hit on Slava Kozlov, which is seen as, it's a pretty big hit. And his career, there are some pretty big notable hits. And that 95 Stanley Cup, the Devils showed they were tough. They had great defense. And overall, this was a very well-run franchise at this stage. 95-96, 82 games, 5 goals, 23 assists, 28 points. The offense is down, 100 penalty minutes. But Stevens wasn't about the offense. Stevens, it's great if the offense is there. But his game is on the defensive side. It's the physical intimidation, and it's the matchups. You're matched up against Scott Stevens. Good luck. 96-97, 79 games, 5 goals, 19 assists, 24 points, 70 penalty minutes. He's a second-team All-Star, and he's 4th in Norris Trophy voting yet again. So he's close. He's getting attention, but he doesn't win a Norris Trophy. 97-98, 80 games. Again, the offense is down. 4 goals, 22 assists, 26 points, 80 penalty minutes. So now he's down to his penalty minutes and his games played being even. 98-99, 75 games, 5 goals, 22 assists, 27 points, 64 penalty minutes. So it's still coming down. 99-2000, 78 games, 8 goals, 21 assists, 29 points, 103 penalty minutes, and a Stanley Cup as well, a Conn Smythe Trophy, and helped to end Eric Lindros's career. That was the year that he throws the hit on Lindros, and Lindros was not the same after that. And again, I really think the hits that are on this board, especially noticing the really big hits were late in his career. This goes a long way towards the NHL saying we need to change things. I think part of it too is as the years go along, you get more camera angles. You have almost every game on TV, if not every game on TV. Whereas back in the 80s, you may have some that are not on TV. You may not have very many angles. And so there may be hits that get thrown by a guy like Stevens that don't get nearly as much attention as they do later on. And especially, of course, this is Stanley Cup, and the Washington Capitals weren't getting close to the Stanley Cup in the 80s. So 2000, 2001, 81 games, 9 goals, 22 assists, 31 points, second team All-Star, and third Norris Trophy voting. And then against Carolina, Shane Willis takes the brunt of a big hit from him, and then in the next game, it's Ron Francis. And he definitely tended to throw hits on the big players, and it's that question too about, you know, when the player comes across the trolley tracks, you're coming across the blue line, you've got your head down, you've got the puck. Stevens sees that. It's just red meat for the wolf. He would go straight at him, and there was no, well, with this angle it's a head hit, he should have chosen this angle. That's not a conversation back then. Back then it was just, hey, this guy has his head down, he's coming across the middle, drill him. And it didn't really matter how you drilled him, what the angle was. You just, you know, get him separated from the puck as violently as possible. It's his own fault for having his head down. And so these are some hits that are garnering a lot of attention. They're ending up in every highlight reel package. And they're likely ones that the NHL looks back on after and says, so we need to clean that up. The following season, 2001, 2002, 82 games, just the one goal. 16 assists, 17 points, only 44 penalty minutes. And he's still playing roughly 23, 24 minutes a night. So it's not that he's not playing. The offense is down, but the defense is still there. He can still do the matchups. He's not getting into the physicality side of it when it comes to getting penalties as he was before. But the hits are still there, as 02-03 shows. 81 games, 4 goals, 16 assists, 20 points. Point totals are an aside. 41 penalty minutes. But as they're running to the Stanley Cup, in the Stanley Cup final against the Anaheim Ducks, it is Paul Kariya that is the next victim to a Scott Stevens hit. Which, looking back, you can ask, so would this be legal from today's standards? The answer is no. But back then, it was seen as, well, that's a good hit. That's on Kariya. And I heard it. And I remember thinking, well, okay, but, and this is why I'm willing in videos now to look at a hit and go, this is legal, but I don't know if it'll be legal later, which people will look at and go over and say, oh, this is, you know, you're talking about taking all the hitting out of the game. No. And it's like back then, these are hits that are happening that we can have the debate on whether or not they should happen, and whether or not they should be legal, and if that rule should be changed. As players have gotten bigger, they've gotten faster and definitely stronger, and Stevens was hitting everything that moved. And then when a guy like Ty Domi wanted to fight him, he was like, nah. Which again, I get it, because Domi was one of the toughest fighters in the game. 2003, 2004, in what would prove to be his final season, he retired in 2005. 38 games, 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points, only 22 penalty minutes. So it's a quiet end to his career overall. He finishes with 1,635 games played. That's impressive. 196 goals, 712 assists, which is 52nd on the all-time list. 908 points. It is remarkable that he ends up with 900 points, 1,600 games. And again, no Norris trophies. 2,785 penalty minutes, which is 14th on the all-time list, because a lot of guys got over 3,000 penalty minutes. There's a lot of anger back then. Playoff, he had 233 playoff games, which is fantastic. That's, 3 seasons of playoff hockey almost. 26 goals, 92 assists, 118 points, and 402 penalty minutes in the playoffs as well. He was a good defensive defenseman. Excellent defensive defenseman as his career went along. And the offense was very good as well. He did get Norris votes. Never got enough to actually win the Norris Trophy. But, again, Hall of Famer. There's no argument about whether or not he should be a Hall of Famer. And, yeah, probably one of the, if not the best captain the New Jersey Devils had. They get the 3 Stanley Cup rings. And he changed the game. He absolutely changed the game. Because, again, a lot of these hits we look at now, we look at because of the hits thrown by Scott Stevens and the NHL having to make changes. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts in the comment section below. Because, again, I know Stevens is he is that divisive topic where There are people who say, hey, the 3 cup rings, Hall of Famer, great guy. And there are others who will say he was a dirty player. Again, my opinion, finally on this, is clean player for his time. He would have to adjust his game if he was playing now. But he was an intelligent player. He adapted well to new situations and scenarios. I think he would have adapted his hitting, and he still would have hit just as much, probably just from different angles, and there probably wouldn't have been the head hits and probably the concussions that followed if he'd played now. But let me know your thoughts on that as well. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Channel just passed 214,000 subscribers, so thank you guys so much for that. And yeah, thanks for all your support. I will talk to you guys again soon.